Hi, this is Kalyan Karmakar, and welcome to Foodocracy for Her. Foodocracy for Her is my podcast where I speak to women in the food business and who are doing amazing and fascinating work. My guest today, Shormista Mukherjee, is slightly different in that sense, in the sense that she's not directly in the food business, or at least yet, or not that I know of. And but she does work with brands in the food space, and she's a consumer of people who are in the food space, including like a big fan of Home Chefs. She was a judge in our Home Cheffies award, and especially the social media section. And she has a point of view on what Home Chefs can do to make a better brand. But she's also written a book, and probably the first half of our interview, which will be probably an hour long, will focus on that. So welcome on board, Shormista. You're bright and sunny, huh?
Thank you, Kalyan. Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here. It takes a courageous man to invite a woman to talk about breast cancer in our country. So I'm really, really pleased. And I don't know how many people know this, but you and I go back like a long, long way back. So
Yeah, she was a
so it's
stalker.
really comfortable and it's really nice. And I'm really happy to be here today.
Thank you. This was the that was going to be my big reveal, but you've already done it. I don't know if it's going to show ulta to you people, but I think it's going to. So this is
It's looking fine. It's looking fine.
Shormista's book. Yeah. So we're going to talk about cancer. You picked the wrong girl first, but let me just tell you that yes, we do go a long way back, and Shormista was actually a stalker. So so we have our own Cape Fear thing. So no, but in a good way. So yeah, can stalkers be in a good way? But anyway, so this is I started writing my blog in 2007. So maybe like around 2008, 9. I was writing my blog, Finally Chopped, and then there was this blogger who would often be commenting there. And the blogger's name was Agent Agent Green Glass, and which is Shormista's handle still on Instagram and Twitter and everywhere else. Now back then, blogs, and I'm not talking about Instagram, but these were like websites on things like WordPress and Blogger. It's a bit like, I know for people listening in today, it's like as if I'm talking about gramophone records and all of that. But but blogs were there, and people actually used to comment on blogs, unlike today where it's more on social media. So she would often comment, and also at that time, a lot of bloggers were anonymous because a lot of us had other lives, and what we would blog about was perhaps not about that life, or maybe it would make fun of that life. So we didn't want people to know about it. So I had a pseudonym, the Knife. But my name was there, Kalyan Karmakar, and I would put up pictures and all that. Shormista wouldn't. So then she would say that, by the way, I know your wife, we work together, and I saw you guys the other day, and I also tried this dish and things like that. So I'm like, who's this? And and then finally there was this fateful Christmas when we just moved into an apartment which we'd rented, and it was slightly bigger and we could call people over. So Shormista, then there was another blogger whose name is Jia, and whose pseudonym then was the Cloud Cutter. So we all decided to do this big reveal and then do a Christmas party at our house. So that's when I met Shormista, Jia, and everyone. And I realized that Shormista and Kainas were colleagues at one point at Leo Burnett. And then Shormista did a very interesting thing. She then moved from Leo Burnett to set up her own agency, which is called Rickshaw. So at that time, from what I understand, the idea was to set up her own mainstream advertising agency, as one calls, which mainstream is like television, radio, newspaper, and all that sort of stuff. And then she started working with a digital agency called Flying Cursor. And at some point, Shormista, at any point you feel, Shormista, I'm sort of getting a story wrong, please button. And at some point she decided.
No, go on. Then I'm going to give you my side.
Yes. So at some point, she felt that the digital world is where she would like to be. So I mean, she probably sold her stake over there, and became a partner at Flying Cursor, and she was probably one of the first from mainstream advertising to move to digital. Which was almost 6-7 years back, if not more, and that was a big transition. And that was also the time when I made the transition from being a full-time market researcher to becoming a freelancer in the food world. And some of my first brand projects were with her and her agency. And and I remember the first time we met, the menu was definitely, it had Saur Patel and Sanas, and a lot of old monk, and Cloud Cutter had baked a very boozy cake. So and Kainas had made these toothpicks with cheese and grapes. With that, over to you, Shormista. Perhaps you want to say something about your work journey before we get into the book.
So actually, Kalyan, you've got everything right. Like, so from Dubernet, I went to Saatchi, all that. So I'm going to cover all that. But what I'm first going to talk about is my side of the story of how I knew Kalyan. Okay, so I still have Kalyan's name saved as the knife. So I never look for him on my phone book as Kalyan. It's always the knife. Okay, and I'm superstitious about changing names. Like once I'm friends with someone, I will not change their names. So I have all these strange names, which, now they're my friends, but the name still exists like that. So he's perpetually the knife on my phone, and he's going to remain the knife. But so I remember Kalyan's blog, and I used to go onto his blog and I used to read and everything else. And I knew he lived in Bandha and stuff like that. What I did not know was that he was married to Kainas. And one day I see this man has put up Kainas' picture. And I'm like, what? This is Kainas. I have worked with Kainas. This strange man, why is he putting up a picture? So,
Punching above his league.
Yeah. I'm like, no. I'm like, oh my God, I thought he's a nice guy, some stalker. So I think did I message you or I messaged Kainas? But I messaged
Must be Kainas.
I messaged Kainas saying, Kainas, you know what? There's this guy and I go and read his blog and he's put a picture of yours, and Kainas writes back saying, yeah, I'm married to that guy. I'm like, oh, okay. Why didn't I think of that solution? But yeah, so that is really how I first got to know Kalyan. But yeah, it's been so interesting because I think in a way, and it's not like we talk every day, but
No.
we've kind of seen each other through so many transitions in life, And what I really like is, for me, friendship is not about calling someone every day, but just knowing that this person is there and it's just part of my life. And there have been times when we meet a lot, and then there are times when there's a large gap and we don't meet, and then we keep talking. So I really like that. I think just having that connection is really awesome. And when I was sick, I think you were such a big part of my life. You would write to me all the time, etc. So yeah, so that's my connection with Kalyan, which I wanted to talk about.
So we both
yeah,
thought that we were stalkers. So we both thought that we were
stalkers. And that's why you're saying he was a stalker. I'm like, no, you were the stalker, Kalyan.
And there were so many similarities between the way we thought, because when you wrote in your blog, and like I remember there was this one blog post you'd written, and I don't know by then whether we knew each other or not, but you'd written about the fact that I don't know if you've changed since then, but hugging is something which you are not that comfortable with, and you're coming from a sort of Bengali background, and it's the same with me. Like Kainas is Parsi, so they can compete with the Punjabis when it comes to puppies and hugs and jappies and all that. But she jokes about the fact that when my mom and I meet after a long time, we shake hands. While whenever her mom comes over, which is pretty often because we live in the same city, so.
No, I love hugging. I love hugging. The only thing I remember what that was about. The only thing I don't like is, so when you hug women to women, there's like this squish of boobs, which I don't like. So I'm like, can we not hug like as a side hug?
Yeah. And And I'm a boy who's sort of grown up in Calcutta in the 80s and 90s, where there was a difference in locker room talk and girl stuff, and sometimes I would go a bit red reading her blog, and which I did when I started reading her book, I must say, and but then I was sort of engrossed, and and I think I finished it in 2 nights. And actually, I then gave it to Kainas to read. And Shormista, like every Bengali, did you grow up dreaming that you'll be an author or write a book someday?
No, I
No.
never. I'm a strange person. I had no dreams ever. I was like, everything in my life has just happened. you know,
But every Bengali dreams to be a novelist.
I'm
You know?
half Bengali, half
Uh,
Punjabi. So
so
maybe,
it's all the chole bhature which
yeah.
probably clouded your mind. But like I dreamt of being a writer, and even like when I came to Bombay, I thought I'll write the great Indian novel. But finally I wrote a food travelogue. And cancer, you picked the wrong girl. Is this a subject which you ever thought your book or first book would be about? I mean, forget life. Huh?
Never,
I,
never.
I I mean, I don't know whether one should congratulate you on the book, because how can one congratulate someone who had cancer and battled through it? And when I read this, when I see the book, rather the cover, the name of the book, Cancer, You Picked the Wrong Girl, and the design. I mean, it's not like exactly the same, but it reminds me a bit of the Irma Bombek books, which I used to read 20 years back, if you read them also.
Yes,
So Irma Bombek was this fabulous woman writer who would write with a very acidic pain
if
about
life is a bowl of cherries, then why am I in the
why
pit?
am I the pit? Or wait till you have children of your own
Or
and
the
all of that.
grass is always greener over the septic tank.
And but the thing is that it was fiction what she would write, or I mean there would probably be some of our life experiences which we project, but you were writing about your own life. So some people have wondered, and I've heard whispers of it from your husband on it, not from me, about some people saying that have you trivialized cancer? So is this like a fun book on cancer? I mean, is that possible? Because it's not a so yeah. And from now on, it's over to you.
No, so you said that something, and it was so good because I don't think I've ever thought about it. And the minute you said it, it started. It's in my head now. But I never thought that this. Obviously, I never thought this would be my first book. But see, I've always been a writer. I ran a blog. I have a bunch of short stories published at Juggernaut. But I never thought I had a need to, have the not the patience but the time to write a book, because like I write in the book, I was a workaholic. So I was
Hmm.
like, you know what, this book is going to happen. Of course I want to write a book. I'd love to write a book. I write all the time anyway, but this book will happen, 2 years from now, then it will be 5 years from now, 6 years from now. So not so much the patience, but it just takes time to write a book, and you need to be in that zone to write that book.
Hmm.
And I never had that, time zone, place to myself to write. So that's why, I was just like, it's okay. Right now, though, I'm working like a maniac, and that's good enough, So that was one part of why, I never thought that I would write a book. But
And did you have any? Sorry to interject, but I mean, before this entire the cancer happened, and I'm going to say cancer instead of incident, is that
yeah, that's
was there
good.
any was there any subject to which you had in mind which you wanted? Like, for example, there was this time when I'd taken a break, and people said, "Why don't you write a book before the travelogue and before the contract?" But there was nothing I had in mind which I wanted to write. So, was there something which you wanted to write
Yeah.
about, whether it's advertising or I don't know,
No,
like.
but I wanted to. I've always wanted to write a whodunit, and I was very clear about what that whodunit is going to be, and I mean,
Stalkers.
yeah, choppers. I always knew like that is what I want to write.
Hmm.
But that's the strange thing, you think that that's what you're going to write because that's what you love, and that's the kind of thing that you're good at, and then you end up writing something totally different. But the thing is that I'm glad you asked that question because it was weighing on my head. When I wrote the book, I just told my editor, I said that I'm going to write everything I felt, good, bad, ugly, funny, not funny, just I'm going to be as honest as possible. This book is, I owe it to everybody who's going to read this book to be like that. So, and they were great. I was like, you will not be able to change anything. You cannot tell me, oh, this is too drastic or this is too, and they were great with that. Yeah. But the thing is, Kalyan, I think I spend a lot of time living in my own head, so I'll be chatting with you and I'll be meeting you and I'll be doing all that, but there'll be things that I'll be noting and it'll just stay in my head. I don't know why. It's like, my head is like a huge, I feel like it's got all these files, and it just stays in there. And these are things I find funny, or I'm like, oh, ha, ha. And I never say, it's like a lot of my friends just think I'm very flaky because I don't say those things. It's just, I don't know why it just resides in my head,
So were you pretending to be someone you were not?
No, so it's like, how do I explain this? Like if I go, like when I got diagnosed, I remember, the doctor talking to me and I'm crying. But also there's a part of my head, there's a part of me which is like, oh, you're crying right now, but this can also change your life, for example. Or, when the doctor is telling me that I need to go into chemo, but he's drawing this whole thing and saying, oh, guess what? This is what you have breast cancer. So he's drawing these breasts. And I'm most interested in how does he draw breasts,
You've written about that.
Yeah. Yes. So I think I live half in the present, where I am answering people and understanding what they're saying, and half of me is sort of distanced from everything and I'm just watching stuff. So I never realized that. I always knew I was like that, but I never realized that till I sat down to write the book. And now I totally accept that that's how I am, and it's fine, And you've read my blog, so even my blog, you'll realize, was always like that. It was just things that happened, and then
But there was a lot of honesty in it. I mean, yeah. And at some point, that anonymous part went. I mean, to start with, when you came on Finally Chopped,
yeah,
by then you were already sort of done the reveal.
Yeah, so I never set out to be funny. In fact, a lot of people ask me, did you use humor? I never set out to be anything. That's the best part. And that's
the name and the color, like, there could be a completely different angle to a book about cancer, which is about the resilience, the spirit, the courage, and as a advertising person, how everything, including the design, can reflect that. This design is not that, right?
No.
So was that a worry that because cancer is not fun, right? I mean, especially for people who've gone through.
But it could
like people have a problem with people making memes about the coronavirus, and understandably,
Oh, but there's a lovely page on cancer memes. Oh my God, it's just brilliant. And they call everybody who doesn't have cancer but gives advice muggles. So it's a brilliant page. But see, the thing is, I didn't want this to be about inspiration, because who am I to inspire anyone? Honestly, there are people who go through this and they're lucky, they get out of it. There are people who go through it and they don't make it, So who am I to tell you ki, oh, go ahead and get inspired and this is how you must do it? No, everybody has their own way of coping and everybody's way is valid. So I am nobody to say, hey, this is the way to deal with it. No. So I was very clear about that this is just my experience. It is not a book for anyone to be like, oh, this is how, we must deal with it. No, this is my experience. If somebody needs it because, God forbid, they've got diagnosed or they're a caregiver or a friend, you can read it to know what went through my head. And if there are things that help you in that, great. But I'm not here to give you inspiration or advice, because everybody's journey, like I said, is totally valid.
And I must make 2 points here. One is that it also takes a lot of courage to write a book like this, because in your book, you've also made you've not sort of hidden the fact or whatever, that you went to the Tata Memorial, which is of course considered to be the best in cancer therapy. But then seeing the fact that I mean, you guys fortunately had the wherewithal for taking sort of private hospital things, so you took the call to go to the Ambani hospital in Andheri, and the fact is that, oh, someone could have said, oh, I mean, you know, I mean, they can afford all of that and stuff, and you know how people get judgmental. But what I saw was that in your book, it was almost like you were out with a sense of mission or purpose, that this is what I want to say. And if there's this, and you know, you said about the caregivers and a lot of that. So the fact is that I mean, you know, I mean, cancer per se, unlike say autism, which I spoke about to Dr. Tatiana Dias a couple of episodes back, is something which from our childhood we've known. You know, we've either had people who've had cancer, or we used to raise funds for cancer, and you know, the rose thing in school and all of that. But you know, I mean, one didn't really know much about it, though. I mean, a very, very close family friend and elder sort of passed away due to cancer a few years back. But still, exactly like what is cancer, what is chemotherapy, all of that. So I think that the fact that you make the book very readable made one understand it versus like, you know, if it was doctor speak. So I think that worked. But you know, as a writer, there's always this question that how much of oneself to reveal, and this I think is of interest even to say people who are not writers, but say who are home chefs or influencers or building personal brands or cloud kitchens or chefs or whatever, because a lot of it today really comes into how you're building your own brand, and you know, the learning is that to build your own brand, you need to have your own voice and show what is unique about you, what drives you, and stuff like that. But there's always that worry that, you know, how much of myself should I put out, my family and all of that. So when you wrote this book, I mean, I'm sure there must have been questions in your mind about the fact that my friends are going to read it, my guy friends are going to read it, my people who are so much a part of my life, my husband, my parents, my friends like you know, Ziba and Oindrila, and your close knit you know, village who this thing. And I'm sure in those, during that period, there were times when you must have thought that, you know, they've sort of lost it. So as a writer, how was that thing, and what drove you to be so candid, including, I mean, talking about the number of times you had to go to the loo after one chemotherapy event.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I think there was no other way to do it. I really think that if you're writing, and it, you know, it says a true story on the book. So if you're writing a true story, I mean, then the only thing you have is the truth, right? Then, I mean, but yes, you're right in saying how much of yourself do you give and how much do you keep back, you know. But so when I felt sick, I kept looking for stuff to read. And like you said, I found a lot of motivational stuff, you know, lots of it. But I was like, no, but I want to know like what really goes through people's head, you know, and I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find anything written by an Indian woman treated in India, you know, who had breast cancer, nothing. So I was like, okay, if I don't know if I'm the first, but at least I haven't found anything. So in my head, I'm the first to write about this. Then I have a responsibility in terms of at least being honest about it, you know, and not keeping back stuff, you know, as far as possible. So I put everything. I mean, it you know, there were times when I would like, you know, one day I think I called my editor and I'm like, dude, you know, random men are going to read this book. Okay. And they're going to see
editor was a woman. Editor was a woman.
Yes.
No, because dude and all that.
Yeah. So I was like, you know, random men are going to read this book, and they're going
or men who know you. I mean,
men who know me, clients.
3 pages in, I'm reading about your inverted nipples.
Exactly.
And like, you know, I mean, next time, how do I keep a straight face?
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
no, you're right.
I'm also being honest.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. I think that's the only way we'll be able to have this conversation. You know, it's not.
But then I overcame it, and then I was like, fully into the, what is happening.
Yeah. So that's what and my clients are going to read
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to go for a meeting. I'm sitting opposite a guy who knows that I don't have a nipple, or I had an inverted nipple at one point. And I'm like, do I really want them to know so much about my life? But then I was like,
and you were like you and Parag, you're the owners of the company.
correct.
So how you're seen in a way affects the company, and you have a responsibility to, everyone who's sort of trusted their careers with you. So it's like
Correct.
yeah.
But then I thought about it and I was like, okay, guess what? I went through something life altering and they had to remove my nipple. And this has probably happened to a lot of women. And if I don't say it and I don't talk about it, this thing just keeps staying in, covered up. It just gets brushed under the carpet. We don't understand what happens. Oh, really? Can they remove the nipple? Can they reconstruct a breast? Because nobody's talking about it. But all this happens, right? So then I was like, you know what? I will just feed that silence by not talking about things that are like slightly icky or whatever. And I was like, no, I don't want to feed the silence. I actually want to just put it out there. And I was like, you know what? I'm just trusting the universe. I'll put it out there, and then those who need it will read it and be helped by it, and those who don't need it will be like, what is this?
But what about the people who really matter to you, like Anirban, your husband, parents, your really close friends, because you've taken their names and they're also known. At sometimes you've spoken about maybe perhaps your irritation with them or bafflement with certain points that So did you sort of take them into confidence first? Or
I asked all of them that I'm writing the book and can I use your name, or would you like me to change your name? And I also told them that, listen, it's a very honest book. So, I'll be writing exactly what I feel, and all credit to them. Not one of them said, hey, I want to know what you're writing or change my name. Nothing. In fact, my husband, he only read the book after it had been typeset and there was, like a first PDF draft.
And he himself is an advertising professional and a consultant, and he has his own clients, and he has his Bengali relatives to deal with.
So he didn't ask for the book. My parents didn't. Nobody said. And my friends, my family, all of them, and even the doctors, I was really surprised, and I was very sure that I don't want to get into legal trouble. I've named everybody and everything else. So I asked the doctors that, and I was telling my editor, oh my God, will we have to send manuscripts? These are busy doctors. I don't know how long they'll take to read it. But all of them just told me, you have permission to use our names because you are writing about something that is so taboo in our country, and there's so much silence around it. Please go ahead and use our names. You don't need to send us anything. I'm till day, I find that so amazing.
Like even the specifics,
because I could have been writing anything.
Even the specifics of the fact that when you're doing chemotherapy, there was only, I think maybe one toilet for the entire ward, and your advice was go early in the morning so that you're close to that because you'll have to go many times. And that was in the Ambani hospital, which is like this thing. So imagine what might be happening at Tata Memorial and all of that.
Correct.
The other thing was
also great things about. So
no. There were 98 great things and two.
It's okay. I thought, like, you know what? Why should I keep the bad stuff away?
And this is not bad. This is practical,
how it is. This is the truth about our hospitals. This is the truth about our healthcare system, and we should know that.
I think it was a very practical tip, because even if suddenly a hospital got very embarrassed by what you said, it is not possible to build 10 bathrooms.
Correct.
I mean, we tried to build a powder room when we took our apartment, but because of permissions and all that, we couldn't. So then if this is what life deals you, then how do you plan for it?
Correct. But also, I think it's a good thing for them to understand, because I've written about empathy. I've written about the fact that, there are women staff, for example, when you're having a CT scan or an MRI or a PET scan would be really good, because you're baring your breast to a whole bunch
Yeah.
of people who are sitting behind this.
And largely male, yeah. That's
Yeah,
right.
and largely men, so I was okay, I was fine, I was like, I was like, I just need to get this over with. But imagine that if you're from a conservative background, or you're coming from some smaller place, bigger place, whatever, but it's a huge trauma to a lot of women, so I think, so I wanted to mention that as well.
Shormista, I want to ask you one more question, which is, both related to your professional lives and the book. That in the sort of beginning of the book, before you went into your sort of journey with cancer, you also spoke about the psychological aspect of being an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur, you can't really let your feet off the brakes, right? Because if you're salaried, you can still sort of at the end of it say, "Go, it's your problem," and storm off, which is what it's to do. But you spoke a lot about the mental aspect of it, and getting into depression, and then your experience with medication, the flower doctors, and then counseling, and all of that. So my point is that there are various things in our society, and we are English speaking, Mumbai, advertising, probably the higher end of the progressive spectrum in India, at least. But there's a certain silence when it comes to the human aspect of our lives, when it comes to work life. So there are certain things which are taboo, like, for example, depression, anxiety, cancer, things like that. There's certain things which are okay. Like, you can talk about having a baby, you can talk about having fever, COVID, breaking your leg. So this balance, or this segregation which has happened between work life and own life, and people talk of balance and all those stupid things. But what is your take? I mean, you've been an employee, then you've been a leader in organizations, and then you've had your own organizations, and you've dealt with clients in different forms, as the owner of the organization and as a rep, and this personal thing. So do you think it's time for us to grow up? It's 2022. So what's your take on that?
So definitely, I mean, I think it's been too long for such a long time we've sort of grown up, and I think our generation, I see the younger generation, I feel there's a lot of hope, because I feel like they're not worried about speaking about mental illness, and they're far more articulate, far more vocal, and
Sometimes a bit
there
too
are times
much.
when I'm like,
Sometimes
maybe
I wonder what is the need for us to
I
know
feel like that, but
that,
I'm like, correct, but
like
I'm
the
like, it's okay, I'd rather
boomer
you
Jetu,
be
boomer Jetu.
exactly. Yeah, but I feel like it's okay, the more I see them, the more I feel like even if it's too much, it's still okay, because you know what, you still have yourself at the center of everything. They're good at protecting themselves, in a way. And I think our generation, and even a generation after us, doesn't have those skills. We were always taught that suck it up and move on.
Exactly. I used to be so nervous, even as a senior VP, to go and take leave. While the kids would join and say that we are on duty for a month, 2 months.
So it was a very big thing having and I think it was just conditioning that got passed down from generations. You have a job, you should be grateful for the fact that you have a job.
Karma yogi.
Karma yogi. You have a boss is always right. Don't argue. Even in school, we were taught, don't ask questions. Whatever teacher tells you, questions or asking was a crime, right?
Yes.
So I think that has gone on for too long for our generation, and we kind of set the tone. And I'm so happy that the Gen Z is not kind of I hope they don't go that way. So I feel like for us, and like I said, a generation after us, or 2 generations after us, it's very hard because, we've grappled with everything being different, so much change happening, everything, and yet we don't have the ability to talk,
or
our
empathize,
lives or empathize. Our lives
or
are much,
ask for help.
or ask for
Ask
help.
for help.
Absolutely, so our lives are far more stressful. I'll give an example. Advertising, so when I joined advertising, which is like in 93, okay, and for a very, very long time, it took time to do everything. Why? No internet. So if a client had a brief, it came to you, you thought, you had 7 days to think, then somebody created it, then it went back to the client. If there were changes, that took time because everything had to be done manually. Then came the internet.
And you started in Calcutta, right?
Correct. Yeah.
In Calcutta, of course, even in market research, everything has to be done by the book. I came to Bombay, it was very different. So maybe in Bombay, it wasn't entirely like that.
Yeah, but still,
Calcutta
there was
like,
a certain time that came through. Yeah, because of
like the kosha mangsho has to be kosha out and not the pressure cooker.
Correct.
Not the pressure cooker.
Correct. But now, you have, with the internet, with technology, with the tools we have, everything can be done so fast. So the pressure of everything needing to be turned around now, I hate that term ASAP. Whenever anyone tells me, I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, it's ASAP? I used to think ASAP. Okay.
ASAP, whatever. I was like, what nonsense is this term?
As soon as possible, in case you're wondering.
So I think that is the problem. I think we've seen so much change, and it's hard to cope with that change, and it's hard to sort of deliver to that all the time. Like in my case, I worked like a maniac. I used to work, like literally get up in the morning and be at work by 9 o'clock and leave office at like 10:30, 11 at night, come back home, eat something, whatever was in the fridge, go to sleep, get up in the middle of the night, check your mails again, etc. Now, and I also think somewhere along the line, we've kind of glorified this whole startup entrepreneur thing. It's great having a startup, having an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur is great, but the glorification has not spoken about the pitfalls. How many founders have stood up and said how many of them have got divorced, or how many of them have had heart attacks or ulcers, or how much time they've lost out with their children. We never hear those stories. And those are also very important stories and aspects to listen to, so that we understand where we need to draw our own personal lines.
Or take a call.
So,
or take a call. Or you take a call, knowingly take a call that I'm giving this aside.
Correct.
I'm leaving this aside.
Correct. Maybe what you do is you say, okay, I don't want to make my business grow 10x this year. I'll make it grow 3x, but that 3x will give me more time to do these things. So I think that is the thing that I think the crux of the whole thing is we don't talk. We just glorify certain things, and the rest of the stuff, we just keep it aside.
And there's no nuance, and there's no nuance to the discussion.
Correct. Like panic attacks. When I started getting panic attacks, I thought I was going crazy. I thought I was going mad. I thought they'll commit me to an institution.
I thought I was getting heart attacks.
Yeah.
And I didn't know there were panic attacks.
It was terrible, And then when I started to realize, oh my God, these are panic attacks, I started talking about it. I started saying that, I used to get panic attacks. I wrote about it in my blog. And then a lot of newspapers, I think sometimes, if you, even today, if you do a Google search, at some point, you'll find, me talking about how I used to get panic attacks. And I remember this one journalist called me, and she was doing a story on flower remedies. And she said, I'm not finding people who are willing to go on record saying that they get panic attacks, or they used to. And I was like, no, I will go on record. So, and the minute I spoke about it, I had so many people talk to me, write into me, we were able to chat. I felt better, they felt better. And I feel it's the same thing with cancer. This morning, somebody wrote to me on Facebook saying that she read a review of my book and then bought the book and read it. And she said her mother, her grandmother, and her mother's sister all had breast cancer. And the gene skipped her but caught up with her sister. So she's been through the same thing. And what I found the most poignant was in the end, she said that, I've been able to speak about this to very, very few people. And this is the first time I'm actually putting it out there in public. And to me, when people say that, I feel like what a relief it must be to find that there are more like us.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
And to be able to share that, to get it off your chest,
And that there's nothing wrong with being, and there's nothing wrong with being us. Like, for example, one of my first thoughts when I heard about your thing was that, oh God, like Shormista is, such a fitness focused person. She runs, she walks. When I meet her, she takes me to yoga house and has quinoa burgers and stuff. So how could she? I mean, that's a typical mindset, even whether it's COVID or a heart attack. We always feel that, or we associate some sort of, that person was not careful or this thing about it, but it's not that way, right? So, I mean, I'm sure you've been asked this many times in many of your interviews, but what is your take or advice on this entire subject of cancer, and especially breast cancer and checking up? Your advice to women, perhaps, and then separately to us men, who are either spouses or brothers or fathers or friends or colleagues. How can we support you guys and so and any message you'd like to give out to the women as well? Like, is this age related? Is this like lifestyle related, gene related? And what should one do?
No, so I get asked this a lot. Like, somebody had asked me last time, I forgot where, somebody asked me, like, what can we do to make sure we don't get cancer? And I was like, if I could answer that, I would win the Nobel Prize. Really, seriously. So there is no formula to it, right? So sometimes it could be hereditary, sometimes it's not hereditary, it could be lifestyle, not lifestyle, you could be fit.
And this is all cancers, right? I mean,
it's all cancers, right? There's no, like, there's no, if they could, they would then be predicting it, and more people would be, safe from cancer. But in the case of breast cancer, then the only way out is for us to have early detection. So, a friend of mine called me yesterday and he said he gifted my book to two of his friends, and one of them read the book and then went and did a sonomammography.
And early is how early? How early?
Stage 0.
No. I mean, how old should the person be when they start doing these tests? Like, at what stage, age-wise?
So I'll come to that. So, this friend of mine calls me and he says that his friend read my book, went for a sonomammography and got detected at stage 0.
Okay.
Right. So great part is that they removed the lump, no chemo, no radiation, no nothing. She's going to be clear, which is wonderful. Right. So now what I mean by early detection is, first of all, we need to start talking to girls in school, girls in colleges, okay, not just that whole concept of over the age of 40, 60, all that doesn't apply anymore.
That's what I was aiming at. That's what I wanted to know.
Absolutely. Does not apply anymore. The age limit for, the number of young women getting breast cancer now in India, those numbers are increasing, right? Which means that we need to educate younger women as well. Older women, though, anyway, we need to definitely educate, but that also hasn't happened. So now we have to start right from school. So from the time you are, I guess, 16, 17, you should at least know, we should have this conversation. When we talk to girls about periods, for example, when they're 16, 17, 18, we should start talking to them about very simple thing, not scaring women and saying breast cancer at 16 and 17. But what we should train people to do is to know their breasts. It's called breast awareness. It's looking at your breasts every day when you're having a bath, knowing what they're like, knowing what they weigh, knowing that the nipple comes out. Oh, if it goes in, it's strange. Or if there's some sort of puckering, or the shape has changed, or there's a rash or something, you know the difference because you're looking at your breasts every day. So I think we need to just educate women that every day when you have a bath, know your breasts, right? Look at them. Look at what they look like, feel like, all that, what they weigh, all that. So that when there's the slightest difference, you'll know that, okay, there's a difference. I need to go and get this checked.
And who
most
checks it?
times,
Is it a GP or is it like a specialist doctor? Whom should one go to?
Mostly a gynecologist.
Okay.
To get it checked. And
so not the family doctor necessarily.
Not necessarily. And most lumps are benign, by the way. So they're not even cancerous. They're absolutely benign. But the thing is that I have had benign lumps since I was 19. Okay. So when I had the lump, I thought it's benign. I didn't bother. For a year, I didn't bother. And then it turned out that that damn lump was cancerous. So my thing to all women will be know your breasts. Breast awareness is very, very important. So know your breasts, number one. Number two, we all have this tendency of, just brush it under the carpet. If we deny it, it will go away. But don't do that. It's your
body.
And
you said that especially women tend to do that. Somewhere, women feel that men take everything about themselves very seriously, but women tend to sort of,
I feel that women, we don't. And also breasts. So you feel like, oh, how will I tell anyone, Again, a couple of days back, somebody called me and said that their mother had this lump for 6 months and never told anyone. So the stage keeps progressing if you don't tell. So you need to tell. And the third thing is, it's your body. If you feel something is wrong, go to a doctor, go to a gynae. The gynae says no, ask for another second opinion. It is your body. I went to a gynecologist a year before I got diagnosed. She only did a sonography for me. She did not bother to do a sonomammography. They would have caught me at stage 0. So what is done, but I urge all women that if you feel like, they're not taking you seriously, and a lot of times it happens, make sure you're taken seriously.
Yeah. What can we men do? Like, because we have different roles, right? Husband, spouse, and you said that, kids. So therefore, even as fathers, and sometimes you could be like a single parent, or if both parents are there, then you can tell the mother to sort of look into this. So what do you feel that like we men can do about this to sort of help?
So one of the things I definitely feel is that how going to a gynecologist is such a you'll take a woman friend with you. It's just like going to
it's like buying sand pads or condoms or your cigarettes.
It's like, why? Why are men not present when, maybe some women will not want you, but why is this whole concept of anything gynecological, most men are like, oh, I don't want to know, oh my God, I don't want to go there. Hello.
Maybe you don't need to go into the examination room. Maybe you don't need to go into the examination room. She anyway will pull the pad down.
Conversation. Most men are like, oh, I don't want to hear this. Oh, I don't want to know that. Ooh, it's too much,
But and like I said, we are at the progressive end of the spectrum. I mean, India is a large country and we're very small. And anyway, the rest of the country is very different.
Correct. So I think for men to say, oh, I don't want to hear it, or oh, I don't want to talk about it, or oh, don't tell me, that is
and I must say the first maybe 10 pages, I was like, okay, like, should I? And especially because I know you, and we both know you, and we are in close contact, even because of social distancing, we might not have met. It's not like fiction, but then one sort of got over it. Yeah.
I think that's the thing. I think a lot of men will feel that like, oh, do I need to? But I think that's the thing men need to overcome. Just because it's gynecological doesn't mean that you can know. It's great. Because tomorrow you might, be the most supportive. You might be the caregiver. You might be a support system, whatever. So, it's not. It's nothing to freak out about.
So I want to ask
like how
you.
Men used to be like, oh, I don't want to know yak and all.
Which one? How?
Periods.
Yeah. Okay, so now I want to ask you one question, which I think is relevant to our entrepreneurs, career folks, men, women, everything. that when life dishes you lemons, so to speak, or and or you've really been up shit creek. I mean, all the cliches, but you were in a position where I'm sure you must have been like really scared, and you had to put your career aside for some time, and you're also at the stage where you're like at the the thing where you're entering the peak, like the leadership role and all of that. So you're not like this thing, and then suddenly you were sort of handed this double whammy. So what is your advice to people based on your personal experience, that what can someone do when one has been in a situation like this, to sort of retain one's sense of balance, and and not give in? Because you see, the moment you give in, and you've written about that, the game is over. Yeah. So I don't know if I could sort of explain
Right.
my question, but yeah.
So there are two parts to this actually. One is that I'm lucky, as as somebody who's a co-founder, I also have partners, and
But also
my
understanding partners,
partners,
right? I mean,
amazing partners, male partners, but amazing partners.
Parag,
Like
yeah.
Parag was most, yeah, he was just like, I think he was as distraught as my
Hmm.
family.
Hmm.
He,
Hmm. I mean, he's like family, so.
his family, and then Dikshit, for instance, who was also equally thing. But they just kind of just came to me and they were like, you know what, at this point in time, it's your health. I mean, flying cursor survives this, doesn't survive this. We do what you could do. We can't do what you do. All that will come later. But at this point, it's only your health. If you're not there, there's no flying cursor anyway. So
Wow.
let's
Wow.
get you to the other side. And I think they took on a lot of stress. It must have been very, very hard. And I think I write about that in the book.
You did.
Because
You
one
did.
fine day I'm out. And I tried very hard. I was like, oh, you know what, even with this I'll be able to work 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, but you can't. I just couldn't. I
And in the partnership mix, you brought in something which is different from what they brought in, right? Because you brought in the big brand marketing understanding, and they were the digital brand. So you guys
correct,
sort of complement each other. It's not that you're both doing the same thing, so suddenly one drops off.
correct.
So there's, with
Yeah,
your
very,
going, there's a big chunk which goes out, just as if Parag, for a moment, if he was on a break or whatever, then there will be something which in the mix which goes out, right? Like it's like a fast bowler and a batsman in the in the team.
completely. I mean, I always people will be like, oh, congratulations, you made it. I was like, don't bother to congratulate me. These are the guys who like basically took me across the finish line, because they just, I think they grew up very fast in that one year. They all were like, oh my god, now we've got to double triple do all
Uh,
this. But I think it was also a lot of stress for them. Very, very stressful time for them, because it's hard. One person just disappears and you're trying to do their role and your own
hmm.
role. But everybody was just amazing. Like all the people who work in my office, they all were like, okay, you are gone, but we are going to make sure that the show goes on,
Oh,
and
and I
it was
must say,
incredible. I think every
and I must say at this point, sorry, because in case I miss it later, that after Kana's, my wife read the book, and one was of course what your work family did, and then about what Anirban, your husband, did. She said that after reading this book, all husbands are going to hunt him and beat him up because he set such high standards for all of us. So Anirban, you're a wanted man. Huh? You better like shave off your dadi so that people can't recognize you. I mean, people grow a dadi
he
to
was
be
so
this.
embarrassed. He's so embarrassed by all this, because everyone keeps saying, "But you were
No,
just
but
a baby,
jokes apart,
whatever."
I mean,
He's
jokes apart, I'm sure, like, yes.
no, it was. I don't think I would have got through without him. He was like, I think
Hmm.
everybody needs an anchor, and he was my
No,
anchor.
but what an anchor. I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, before that, he was like any of us, like a regular husband. who made great pasta with begun, Sicilian pasta, which we had, and of course, I mean, and a singer and stuff. But what you spoke a bit about the external environment, which is very important, the support system, and I think that will also tell us perhaps how to deal in such a situation. And what about internally? What kept you going? Like what was the voice inside you saying?
See, I asked Anirban at one point in time, I was like, Anirban, am I going to die? Okay. Because I've seen enough Hindi movies to know that the doctor calls me inside, keeps the patient outside,
Kal ho na ho.
and tells the patient, the family, ki ye to,
Anand.
whatever. Okay. So I was like, has that happened? Has the doctor told you anything? Like, you better tell me the truth, because if I'm going to die, I want to know. Right? First, I thought about it, that do I want to know? Because I feel like, do you want to really know? But then I was like, no, I want to know. I have things to do, I have credit card points that I want to use. So I was like, I really want to know. So he said, no, you're not going to die. Okay. And I will not bullshit you. And I don't think your doctors are going to bullshit you either. So I believed him. Okay. And then once I knew I'm not going to die, I just felt like this is the most challenging time of my life. And I just have to get out of it. I just have to keep eyes on the prize, which is the day the treatment gets over. I'm not going to die. It's going to be hard. I'm going to hate it. There's going to be terrible time, mentally, physically, emotionally, all that. But there will be a time when it will be done. And that is all I need to think about. So I was literally like a prisoner. Every day I would be like, okay, now so many days. Now so many days. Okay, so many days left. So that is really, I think I didn't think about anything else. I just thought that I have to get to that point when I'm done. When the treatment is over and the doctor tells me I am free to go. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a slightly uncomfortable question to ask.
One second. What to cook is a very important question.
Okay, I'll pause. Yes.
And then,
okay, now Shormista's cook has asked her uncomfortable questions, such as, like, she said, make bombil, and she said, there are no bombils, there's squids. Okay, here's the question I want to ask, and I was wondering whether I should ask or not. But, cancer is a bit like a ticking bomb, right? I mean, there could be a relapse or something like that. Of course, one would never wish that. So how do you deal with that aspect?
Not very well. I'm glad you asked this question because, I think for all the people who are term cancer survivors and, you got through it and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's nothing to congratulate you.
Yeah, it's no doctor ever tells you, congratulations, you're a cancer free. Never. They say no evidence of disease. Because, it's one of those things. So you don't know. It's again luck of the draw. So how do you live with it? I think when my treatment was getting over, it was playing on my head all the time. It was just like, I was just like, how can they be sure I'm okay? Am I cured? Is it done? How do they know? It was just, I think I wrote about it also, that I just mentally crashed. I just could not handle it at all. But then slowly with time, you just get better. You don't think about it all the time. You think about it. Right? Like now I have my 6-monthly test on Thursday, and I'm thinking about it all the time. Not all the time, but it's there at the back of my head. I know the day I have my test, I'm going to be shit scared. I have a friend who's going to have been recovered 10 years back. And he just sent me a message the other day saying, finally, I feel like, I can let go of my cancer survivor identity. And they tell me 10 years is a big milestone. Wow. So maybe I can relax a bit, So, and I was like, you should, So I think, I don't think it ever gets easy. I think maybe sometimes you think less about it. Sometimes it comes back, but you just live with it.
Which, I guess, I mean, there might be so many people who might be dealing with certain inner devils, which could be different. but I think that, like you said, because there's nothing which you can really do. So about that, so like you said, you deal with it and move on, because that's what you are under control of. Okay, so I've got exactly 2 minutes, Shormisha, and probably I don't, but just for the benefits of people who are in food business, home chefs, and things like that, any like words of advice from you in terms of how they can strengthen their business and brand, especially for people who are solo operators and who might not be able to get advice from agencies and stuff like that on
Yeah.
branding.
So I'm not going to give advice on entrepreneurship because I think I already spoke about that. But the one thing I will say, and I think you brought it up at some point about, writing the book, and are there any lessons from there that onto people, about entrepreneurship or, starting their own thing and home chefs? I think there's just one thing I think, and, you also voiced it, which is that it's authenticity and honesty. I think that to me is the most important thing, so I remember when I did Home Cheffies with you, which was so much fun, and I got to see so many kinds of home chefs, and I'm just incredibly amazed at how they do this, and all the kind of stuff that they're doing is just brilliant. But I think
And the winner in your category was that young girl, Rennie,
exactly. Exactly. So I think the ones that really stand out, and I think the ones that go on to make a brand for themselves, are the ones that are true to what they believe in. The minute you start going by what will the market like, what will that traffic like, okay, shall I just adjust like this? You're gone. You cannot please everyone. So the best thing to do is please those who are aligned to what you do best, and do that. So if there is a certain thing that you really believe in, or if there's a certain area that you really want to own, then own that. Don't worry if there are not too many people owning it, or I don't know if this is a trend or not. Eventually, if that's what you are good at and that's what you love, it'll pay off in some way or the other.
And that's some
so
of
I
the
think that
and some of the the brands which we really admire, and some which you worked with, do that, right? Like, for example, Mahindra is someone you worked with a lot, the Mahindra group. I mean, there's certainly there's a lot to learn from that. So great. I mean, that was fabulous, Shormista. And authenticity, she's not talking just about the taste, because we had two dhansaks in a spate of 7 days, which tasted completely different from each other. That's Shormista Mukherjee, the girl whom cancer picked wrong. Cancer, you picked the girl, wrong girl. And this is a book, so you can order it online. You might find it in some bookshops. Please read it to, I think, understand more about cancer and breast cancer, and to help others in a situation like that. And that's it. And her page is Agent Green Glass. And if you read something which has touched to inspire you, I think please reach out to her, because I think it helps her perspective as well. And it's a very, very honest book. So thank you for writing this, Shormista. I again wish that this was not the book you had to write, but as Dr. Tatiana had said, that they're chosen people, and people are chosen because they have it in them to take on that. So very proud of you, Shormista, and really happy to have you in our lives. And Loaf and Nimki say a big hi to Tugga, your cat, and we all miss Milo, your dog.
Thanks, Kalyan. I mean, thank you for having me, of course. Thank you for speaking about this. Like I said, a guy wanting to speak about this thrills me no end. I keep telling men that, come on, let's have this conversation. Let's not think it's only a woman's conversation, but you are quite amazing that way. So thank you so much. And more than anything else, I think thank you for being such a wonderful support at that point. Used to write to me, used to pray for me. I remember the first time I could eat out after my chemo was with you. Do you remember?
Yes, at La Folie. That's with Chef Hemal had made the pasta.
And I'll never forget what they did. They fed us, they fed me, because they knew that it was my, first meal after
Meal
my
out.
keep, which I could eat out, and I was craving for pasta. And they refused to. This gave me this lovely bill, and at the end it said 0. And they said, "We're just so honored that you came here." And
They've never done that to me, and I don't expect that because
and the
but so
reason I went there because
yeah.
I think I tweeted saying that, I'm craving pasta. I'm allowed to go out finally and eat. And where should I go? And then Kalyan recommended La Poli, and he even came. And then all this happened. So you've been you've been an important part of that journey and my life. So thank you so much.
No, it's absolute pleasure, and just Kainas and I are so happy for you, and again, Anirban Baga, we pore kotha hobe. Chalo, take care, keep smiling.
Okay,
Bye, and all the best for your test.
thank you. Bye.